Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Can we get a thread going that isn't about tulpas or tarot cards? Scary stories thread. Specifically stories about creepy backroads or forests.
Growing up as a kid, my dad liked to take me out camping a lot. Oftentimes it would just be the two of us jumping into his truck, driving out into some remote area in the forest, not an actual camping ground, pitching a tent, and sitting by a fire. It was a great time for us to bond, away from the chaos of normal life, just the two of us hanging out with nothing else to do. Plenty of creepy stuff happened, but looking back at it now, I can see that a majority of it was all my overactive imagination of being out in the woods in the middle of nowhere. Like the time we came across an area with a bunch of downed trees, and I concocted some story in my head about a monster that roamed the forest and took them all down. There was one moment though that's always stuck out. Something about it never came off as being right, and I've never been able to fully explain or understand it. We were at a new camping area, some place we'd never been before, and after pitching our tent, we decided to go walk off into the woods and wander around. After maybe about an hour in, we broke through the trees and came across a clearing of grass. It was extremely odd in that all around was forest, and here was just this area of grass. In the middle of it sat a small cabin. It looked all raggedy and decrepit, like no one had been there in a very long time. All around the house besides the grass were old rusted out car parts, big huge pieces too. Which is really odd because again you were literally surrounded by thick woods within this clearing, and it'd be extremely difficult, not to mention nonsensical, to have all this junk, especially with no visible cars. Off to the side of the house was, I guess, a canyon. Not really sure what to call it, like a gap in between the land, which had a straight drop down, but the gap wasn't that big, maybe a foot or two. Almost like someone purposely made this little gap here for some inexplicable reason. So, we walked into this area. Before we did so, it was pretty quiet with the exception of the occasional birds chirping or something. Yet as soon as we walked onto the grass, we both distinctly heard this woman. She was yelling, pissed, but what she was yelling about I'll never know because it wasn't English. She had a typical Midwestern accent that I remember, but whatever she was yelling was pure gibberish. Accompanied with her yelling sounded like pounding and banging of feet and fists, and also slamming of pots around. What didn't make sense about this is you could clearly see into the cabin with the window that faced us, and yet we couldn't really make out anyone inside. Or at least I couldn't. What was even stranger was the smell, or really the lack thereof. See, the woods have a certain scent to them, at least I feel they do. It's refreshing, clean, woody, sometimes strong and pungent, but always a scent. There was nothing when we entered in there, nothing at all. Like almost a vacuum had sucked it all up and it was gone. So after this woman had started screaming at us, I obviously didn't want to be there anymore. I was more scared that we were on someone's land as opposed to something paranormal or weird going on. I looked up at my dad to tell him we should probably go, and that's when he did something I'd never seen him do before. He picked me up and just ran straight into the woods. I'd never had my dad pick me up, and I'd never seen him run, ever. Maybe he saw something, maybe he understood something I didn't. I don't know. But whatever it was scared the shit out of him. He ran for maybe a quarter of the way back to camp, set me down and told me to just walk fast. The entire time we didn't say anything, and the entire time it seemed like he was about to do another dead sprint at any given moment. He kept looking back, expecting something, I don't know what. We got back to camp safely, though, packed everything up, and immediately drove off. He's never talked to me about it, and every time I try to bring it up, I just get silent. For the longest time, I assumed it was just trespassing, but as I get older, I find that harder to believe.
Be me. In middle school in the early 90s, in Houston. Older kids in the neighborhood show me a sewer tunnel near the bayou we used to hike in. It's close to a road but down a hill near the water's edge and cannot be found easily. The entrance and about 10 feet in are covered in satanic graffiti, pentagrams, demons, skeletons with Uzis and upside-down crosses and so on. Explore it a little bit. About 100 feet in the tunnel goes from 8 to 10 feet tall and opens up into a huge square room with old couches arranged around a fire pit. More paintings in this area. Tell some school friends about it a week or so later. They think I'm bullshitting, so I offer to show them. After school, 2 friends and I biked to the area. Leave the road and we are walking our bikes through the brush. One friend stops suddenly saying he hears something. Other friend stops to tease him and calls him a wuss, then continues forward. I stopped with the first friend as I was always creeped out by the place, which reminded me of the movie It. The only way down to the tunnel is a narrow rocky path surrounded by thick brush and trees. Not rocky because of the terrain, but from broken concrete meant to control erosion. At this point, my friend who was teasing us freezes and goes still. I start to say something and he cuts me off, still not sure if they are pranking me. Look up ahead at the path, and 3 grown men rise from the brush, staring at us. Remember one holding a chain. I think they had masks on, because I can never remember any faces. Only outfits of long-sleeve flannel shirts and jeans. All 3 of us jump on our bikes and pedal to the busy service road, across a bridge over the bayou, and then back under the overpass to my neighborhood. Every time I look back, the 3 men are running full sprint, followed us to the edge of the neighborhood, then stopped. Never went back and never spoke about it. The area was converted to a park's bike trail about 10 years ago.
I recently moved out of my old apartment, and I've never been happier. The apartments I lived in were kind of old, but still really nice with a rustic feel. Each little island contained 4 buildings, each with 4 units. 2 buildings would face each other, one of them with its patio, facing the patio of another building, and the parking lot would be in between. This meant that from my building in my master bedroom balcony, I could see the parking lot and the front of the adjacent building, and in the second room, my workout office room, I could see the patios of my neighbors. Shortly after I moved in, this guy moved into the building behind mine, 1 unit over. He and I would sit on our patios every night during the summer with a fire going. Sometimes he would play his guitar and have a beer while his dog barked at everything. I would make s'mores or do some woodworking. Being that we were the only 2 people using our patios, we began to bond. We actually became pretty good friends and ended up having small parties with just the 2 of us joking around, having beer and s'mores, and messing with his dog. However, during the colder months or on the summer nights, where we weren't out back having fun, he would let his dog out at the same time every night, 9 p.m. His dog would remain outside for 30 minutes exactly, and I could hear him bark at everything. It didn't bother me much because I was usually working out or watching TV and I could drown it out. Fast forward a bit, I had been there 2.5 years, the guy just a few months short of that. For those 2.5 years, his dog barked for 30 minutes, starting at 9 p.m. every night. But the guy slowly started becoming more distant and acting weird. He wouldn't come out as often during the summer. He wouldn't come over at all anymore. It didn't bother me in the sense that I was losing a buddy. It was just odd. But his dog was still outside every night. So I started spending summer nights out back by myself again. But his dog would still be let out every night. It was weird though, because no lights were ever on at this guy's house anymore. I would see the privacy blinds of his patio door shuffle, and the door would open, drag the leash inside, the dog would come out, and the door would close. Same thing in reverse when the dog went back in, but I could never make out the guy. One day I decided to see if he was all right. He'd mentioned one night about going through a divorce, but he was trying not to let it get him down. I figured he'd probably lost everything, and the divorce was final or some shit, and he was depressed. Normally when I'd go over, I'd knock on the patio door and go in from there since it was just across the back. I went over one day after work while it was still daylight and knocked, but there was no answer. I went around to the front and his car wasn't there, which was odd because he was usually home at this time. I went back around and just peeked through the patio door though, just in case. I was pretty shocked though. None of his stuff was there. It's almost like he literally disappeared. Just the day before I had seen him, and he didn't mention anything about moving, no moving van, nothing like that. I went to the leasing office and asked about him, and they told me he'd moved out that morning. When I asked why, they said he never gave a reason, just that he needed to end his lease early. I felt pretty bad for the guy, being that he was a total bro and overall nice guy. But I went home and continued my evening as usual. Until 9 p.m., that is. At 9 p.m., I heard what I can only describe as a mix between a mournful moan mixed with the bark of a dog that was being choked. That description doesn't even do it justice, but it almost sounded as though whatever were making the sound was saying, "How" or "ow." The sound was very close, so I looked out the patio door, but I didn't see anything. I went to my office and took a look out the window. From there, I saw a shadowy figure in my ex-neighbor's patio. To this day, the thought of that figure gives me the most legitimately terrifying chills I think I'll ever get. It looked like the silhouette of a dog standing on its hind legs, not balancing on the fence or the wall or anything, just standing there, making that horrible moaning/bark sound. I locked all doors and windows and just sat there listening to it for 30 grueling minutes. Every night like clockwork, starting at 9 p.m. and ending at 9:30 p.m. I heard the moan bark. It drove me nuts and terrified me. I didn't know who or what the thing was making it, just that I could see the silhouette it made in the patio. I had friends over to confirm it. Before they saw and heard the thing, they suggested we just go see what made the noise. But once they heard the moan and saw the shadow, they changed their minds. When my lease was up, I told the people at the office I was out and never coming back. I hauled as much shit out of there in one day as I could to avoid coming back, and I've never been happier. It's like some kind of weight was lifted off my shoulders. To this day, I don't know what that thing was, what it was doing out there barking, or where the guy went. Before I moved out of there, I took this picture from my office window. I wouldn't have been able to get a picture of the dog creature at night, but it used to stand near the patio door and looked like it was facing diagonally toward the gate.
Last summer, delivered luggage for an airport in northern Michigan. Bags that had been lost and missent. Worked the last shift, so 10 p.m., whenever we got finished. Last bag of the night, already like 4 a.m. The whole state of Michigan is in the middle of nowhere, but where we had to go for this one was particularly fucked. Not even a town, just in the woods. 3 of the 4 roads that lead to this house, really just a cabin, are literally so far in the woods and so rarely used that, as we get deeper, they just can't be driven on. Road is kill. No, we have to back out of all these pieces of shit backwoods, Michigan bullshit roads. Finally, last one is just kept up enough for us to get to the road these people lived on. I say lived, but they were only staying there as a base camp for their backpacking trip. Keep in mind, I'm in a shitty 1998 Honda Civic by myself at 4 in the morning. I haven't seen another person or another vestige of human civilization in probably 15 full minutes of driving down this shit. If I don't get these bags dropped off, I have to drive over an hour back to the airport before I can go home. All your bags belong to us. Have to pull into a weird cul-de-sac. But before I do my headlights, catch 2 figures. 2 kids, probably 18 to 21, with this weird look in their eyes, almost like someone who's tripping, hard to explain. Walk up to the car window. Fuck this job. Don't open it. They stand there for a few seconds, finally walk away. I find the cabin, drop off bags, and nope so hard they want to find me. That shit was crazy.
You know, too many of these fucking stories happen at night. I'm sure you're all big tough guys going out in the woods at midnight and not giving a shit. But personally, I'm quite happy to be behind 4 solid walls and several miles of city by the time the darkness closes in. So this is one from the bright sunshine, one of the first days when spring starts turning into summer. The city life does begin to get to you after a while, so I decided to enjoy the sun out in the countryside, or at least as close as you can get around here. I lived around Leeds at the time, and the whole area for several miles around there is basically a bunch of little towns in the process of becoming one big suburban sprawl. But there's still some nice areas if you're willing to look around a bit, and can't be bothered to actually make the trip up to the moors. So I'd started off along one of the old canals, but that got a bit samey after a while, so I broke off into some woods. Not much of a path because technically I'd passed the real entrance like 10 minutes ago, but screw it. It's not exactly mountaineering, and besides, I kind of like the off-the-beaten-track feel. Okay, so it's a kind of naturalist hipster thing, but I like finding the nice little spots that nobody else knows about. Anyway, after I've been going like this a while, the trees are actually starting to get pretty thick, so I decide I'd probably better start trying to find my way to the path. So I started making my way towards some of the clearer areas, and I noticed something like 50 feet away, a bunch of people standing around, and what looked like smoke. Moving around to get a better look, I could see that they were standing around a barbecue, which on the first nice day of the year I normally wouldn't give a second thought to. But in the middle of the woods, feeling like a bit more of a badass than usual, I decided to go over and confront them, or if I'm more honest, probably just ask, "Hey, you guys all right there?" Oh, okay then. As I got closer, though, I realized there were a few things besides the location that seemed a bit weird. There were a whole bunch of guys, I think around 5, but I didn't count, and 2 girls with them, all around their late teens. but they didn't seem to be joking or taking the piss out of each other or shouting or whatever it is teenagers around here get up to. They didn't even seem like they were having fun. One or two of them looked like they were talking, but it was too quiet for me to even hear a murmur, and they all looked pretty tense. And as far as I could see, the only thing they had with them besides the barbecue and one or two rucksacks was a large black bin bag. Well, by this point I was feeling a fair bit less secure in my badassness and thinking better of my idea of trying to turn half a dozen of the local chavs into upstanding citizens. So I decided to just be on my way, doing my very best not to look like I was deliberately avoiding them, of course. As I bent my course around to avoid them, one of them pointed, and I noticed a few of them looking over in my direction and saying something. I just tried to keep my head down and gave them a wide berth. My curiosity sort of got the better of me after I was past them, though, and I turned round for another quick look before I passed the point where they'd be out of view, just to see if I could puzzle out what was going on. And that's when I saw that two of the guys had left the group and were coming after me. I have no idea who started running first, but fortunately I still had a fair bit of a head start on them, and fortunately, my naturalist cred paid off as I was well used to getting through uneven terrain, something judging from the crashed behind me my pursuers weren't. Not that I felt so smug at the time, of course. I was too busy running as fast as I could manage. I probably lost them long before I stopped, but I wasn't ready to waste time turning around until I was well out of those woods. Not exactly a marathon, luckily. There were houses backing up to them after what can't have been much more than half a mile. I thought about going to the police, but then I didn't really have that much to tell them. There were a few people having a barbecue in the woods. Some of them walked in my direction, so I ran off. I think they chased me. Nope, no idea who any of them were. I did go back there, though, a few days later. I took it a lot more carefully this time, but of course there wasn't anyone there after days. I was able to find the spot where they'd been, though, or around there at least, from where they dumped the burnt-out charcoal. Obviously, the barbecue itself was gone, along with that bin bag, and as far as I could see, they hadn't been stupid enough to drop anything of theirs. The only thing I did find was the charred remains of a wristwatch buried among the charcoal.
Be in Nana's house, 13 or something. Nana is my nanny, as in my mother's mom. Typical tall but small house, know what I mean? Creaky stairs, drinking tea, watching TV, Mom and her parents catch up, talk about stuff. We live far away. Decide to go to bed, walking up. No one else upstairs. Distinctly hear creaking as if someone's walking up or down. No. Turn 180 degrees. Mom. I would like more tea. Thought you wanted to go to bed? What? No. Probably just the old house being old. But as a kid, you know how it is.
In the summer of 2010, I ended up in Hardinsburg, Kentucky for my grandmother's funeral. The only other time I had been up there was when I had been younger, and it was so that my grandfather could be the priest for my dad's current marriage. Anyways, I was in Kentucky for 5 or 6 days, and spent every night at my cousin/aunt's, I am not really sure which she is, house. Of the grandchildren who were grown up, I was the youngest and ended up on babysitting duty for the majority of the time up there. I stayed in a little trailer at the top of a hillock along with a bunch of my younger cousins. During the day, everyone would go over to my granddad's and leave me there with the kids, and then come home for a few hours and put the kids to bed before heading back out to go and do God knows what. I stayed up pretty late on the last night we were there. The kids were in bed, and I had the place to myself for quite a while, so I figured I would go and sit on the porch enjoying a cigarette. As I walked out the door, there was this god-awful stench. It was a shitty smell that is really hard to describe, but I am sure if you have smelt it, you know what I am saying. It was just this gross-ass stench that hit me like a ton of bricks when I got outside. I started gagging and walked down the stairs of the trailer thinking I would get some fresh air off the porch. As I got down, I saw in the moonlight what looked like one of my younger cousins, Aiden. He was just kind of standing there with his back to me a good 50 feet away from the trailer. I yelled out to the little kid that he needed to get back inside or his mama would flay him alive, but he just kept standing there. I kept hollering and walked up to him, and as I got closer, I noticed he seemed kind of off. He was standing, but he had his knees bent at weird angles to each other and his head was cocked to the side a little. I tapped him on the shoulder and he turned around. Aiden had this crazy manic smile on his face and sweat was just pouring off of his little forehead. He started shaking, and it took me a moment to realize that he was laughing 'cause no sound was coming out. I tried to pick him up and carry him inside so I could look at him in some decent light and make sure he was okay, but he must have backstepped as I tried to get him. I snatched at him again, and I caught him, and he just started screaming in this really freaky guttural voice I didn't think he could make. It was just way too deep and gruff for a 5-year-old to make. While he was screaming, he was also flailing his arms and legs around. He ended up making contact with my groin, so I dropped him, and he ran off towards the trailer. I sat there hunched over for a moment, getting some air before running up after him. He was gone when I looked up, so I ran inside hoping he would be waiting for me in the living room. Well, he wasn't, but after some looking around, I found him passed out in the top bunk of his bunk bed. I was confused as shit, but I wasn't going to wake him up, and I just decided I would let his mom know about it when she got home. When my aunt got home a few hours later, I told her about it, and she woke Aiden up to ask about it. He had no clue whatsoever what we were talking about, and we ended up sending him back to bed after giving him some juice. My aunt thinks I must have had some crazy vivid dream and made it up. But the next morning while I was loading my stuff up into the truck, I smelt that gross smell, and I would have sworn I saw Aiden darting underneath the trailer. Had he not walked out the front door a split second later, along with the rest of the family, I would have chased after him. But I just told myself I was imagining things and didn't say anything to my family.
I'm into photography, and I like to check local thrift stores, yard sales, flea markets, etc. on the weekends for old cameras to pick up. One day at a yard sale, I found an old Minolta Hi-Matic AF for $2.50. It still had a roll of film in it, fully shot, so I paid for the camera and had the film developed. This picture was the only one that wasn't completely black. I thought it was kind of neat looking even though it wasn't a technically good photo. I put it away in a shoebox along with other photos that I had come upon in the same way. A few nights later, I had a dream about the photo. Not the photo itself, but the place and the figure in the photo. I was standing in the same position the original picture taker would have been standing in. The figure in front of me looked the same as it did in the photo. A bit blurry, with the head completely blurred and blackened. The figure was standing totally still. There was no ambient sound. It was daylight, but the light was a bit strange, and it was cold outside. The figure started to turn its head toward me. I awoke in fright. I've had the same dream at least once a week since that first time. The only difference is that the figure seems to turn its head toward me a little bit more each time I have it, like the dream lasts a bit longer each time. Each time I wake up terrified. I'm worried what will happen if it ever fully turns around and looks at me.
Might as well. When I used to live in my old town, I would explore the surrounding areas for shits and giggles. It was in the middle of Washington state, so basically a temperate desert with lots of tweakers. I was driving way deep into the foothills one day by myself, onto the reservation just looking for stuff to check out when I see this creepy, dilapidated house off to the side of the road. What the fuck? I'll check it out. There's a driveway with 2 earth mounds like 15 feet high on either side. Park in between them and get out. Lots of trash, I mean a ton everywhere. Walk up to the house, low L2, spooky 4 me hue, all broken and rotting exposed basement. Think about going inside, but I'm not an idiot. Those floors look like a death trap and I'm in weaker territory. Keep walking around to back a house. What the fuck is that smell? Right out back, lying in the sun, was a horse corpse. Half-decayed maggots, exposed, side of face mostly rotted away. WTF, who dumps a horse here? Start noticing dead animals all around, including rotting meat right next to the wall of the house. Nope the fuck out, .jpg. Head back to my car. As I'm opening the door, a shitty car full of scraggly tweakers passes, coming from the direction that leads to the middle of nowhere. All of them are fucking staring at me. I went back another time with a friend, but I goddamn brought my gun that time. I don't know what that house was, but it was fucking unnerving.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.